Hi, I'm David Warlick, and I am standing in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa, which seemed like a pretty good place to have a little conversation with y'all about how the world is flat, because I'm in perhaps one of the flattest parts of the United States. Um, and of course, this is not the flat world that we're talking about. This is not the flat world that Thomas Friedman was talking about, not a world that is literally flat, but a world that is flattening in some rather interesting ways. And I thought what I would do is spend a few minutes telling you about my first flat world experience. First time that it occurred to me that the world was becoming flat. Of course, I wasn't using terms like that. I wasn't thinking about that because this was 20 years before Thomas Friedman wrote his book. So I got to go back 20 years ago. I got to go back to 1990, which was before you were born. And my very first experience with the internet. Now, at the time, I was working in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was working for the North Carolina Department of Education, and I had access to the internet. I was the only employee of the Department of Education who had access to the internet, and I was really one of probably a fairly large handful of people in the whole state who had access to the internet. The internet was something that most of us hadn't even heard of. But one afternoon, I got an email message while I was at work announcing a brand new service on the internet. The service was called IRC, which is short for Internet Relay Chat. This became chat rooms. It became IM, it became ICQ, it became text messaging, and I guess to a certain degree what status messages are on Facebook. But this was the very first of that type of technology where a person could sit at a computer, type in a message, and then have other people around the world read that message as you're typing it in. So the email message described this IRC and how it worked and where you went, and it was located at North Carolina State University, which was only about a quarter of a mile from my house. So this made it even more interesting. So that night I went home, helped get the kids to bed, and then connected to the internet. I logged in to this IRC server at North Carolina State University, and I immediately got these letters, A, B, C, D, which were identifying channels. Years later, we would call them chat rooms. But A channel, B channel, C channel, beside of each channel was a number indicating how many people were currently chatting in that channel. So I chose C because I had 4 people already talking. I figured if there's 4 people talking, then I can go in and just simply pay attention. Just lurk is the term, because I was a little shy. So I chose C, and I started seeing these messages scrolling up, these 4 people talking to each other. I read them and very quickly realized that they were computer science students, which made perfect sense because North Carolina State University is our main computer engineering school in the state. So they were talking about a test that they had just taken, and they were not being at all polite about it. But I continued to read what they were saying, and finally, after a bit, I interrupted, and I introduced myself, and I told them, why I was there and what I did for a living, and they very politely faked an interest in what I do for a living. And then I asked them abruptly, what do you think a 5th grader could do with this level of access to the internet? Well, there was a long cyber pause, because in 1990 nobody was thinking about 5th graders on the internet. In 1990, this was before the World Wide Web. This was before Internet Explorer and Firefox and Safari and things like that. At that point, you moved around on the internet by typing these little incantations, these little commands into the internet to do this or to do that. Go here or go there, download this file, download that file. So nobody was thinking about schools on the internet. But finally, after this pause, somebody piped in and said, well, there's this server, this host on the internet down at NASA where you can type in this command and it downloads a file that lists all of the upcoming shuttle missions and the manifests of those missions and the experiments that they're running and that sort of thing. And then after a moment, somebody said, well, there's a host at the University of Washington State where you can type in this command and it downloads a file that lists earthquakes that have happened around the world over the last 2 weeks. And then somebody said, well, if you can get that there, you can take it over here and you can do this with it. And they started getting very excited. I could tell that these computer nerds were getting excited because their spelling was improving. and finally somebody said, well, this is so interesting. There's so many possibilities. Let's get together and talk about it face to face. Let's have a meeting. Now, this is there's all kinds of possibilities. So I said, great, where do you want to meet? And they gave me the name of a pizza joint, which I didn't recognize because I'd only lived in Raleigh for about a month. And then so they gave me the address. I didn't recognize the street either. So I said, well, where are you guys anyway? And they replied, Reykjavik, Iceland. Well, I had to respond, I got to take a rain check because I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, USA, and I can't make it to Reykjavik. But we continued talking for a few more minutes, and I finally said I had to go and said goodbye and thanked them for the conversation, and they thanked me for the conversation, and I logged off, and I proceeded to pat myself on the shoulder. This was wonderful. I had talked to people in Reykjavik, Iceland, for free. It wasn't until about 2 weeks later that I got to really thinking about this experience, and I realized that what was special about this, what was unique, was not that I was talking to people a quarter of a planet away for free. What was unique was that I talked to these people for 40 minutes before I knew that they were in Reykjavik, Iceland. For 40 minutes, it didn't matter that we were a quarter of a planet apart from each other. For 40 minutes, it didn't matter that we spoke different native languages. For 40 minutes, it didn't matter that we came from different cultures. For 40 minutes, it didn't matter. We were just people sharing ideas regardless of where we were. And I knew then that this was a model for the world that my children are going to inherit. A world where you live does not matter the way that it did when I was growing up. Where you live does not matter nearly as much as what you know, and what you can do with what you know, and what you care about. And I'd like to suggest that these are 3 things that y'all are going to be thinking about over the next few weeks and months as you engage in this project. That you're going to be learning new things, but not just to learn them. You're going to be learning them because you're going to be doing something with it. It's going to change your mind about things, and you're going to use it to change the minds of other people. You're going to use it to build information that is going to influence other people. And you are also going to come to care about things in a different way, to realize that today it is not just caring about your family, it's not just caring about your neighbors, it's not just caring about your town, your city. But today we have to care about everyone. Because we live in a world that is flat, and we are connected, therefore, to everyone. Thank y'all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful project. I look forward to keeping an eye on it. Bye-bye.